We're back in the law office of local attorney Parker Layrisson here in Ponchatoula. Parker, among other things, is quite the prolific writer, a published author of a couple of books, and he has a new one out, a handbook for accident victims. We've all been in traffic accidents, but it turns out from a legal standpoint, there definitely are some do's and don'ts.
Thank you, Ken. I've written an accident handbook, top 5 mistakes to avoid and other secrets auto insurance adjusters don't want you to know about car crash claims. It's packed with information that accident victims can use to help them figure out how to act when they get in a car accident that's injured them.
What are the numbers? I mean, it seems to me almost everybody on the planet has been in an accident at one time or another.
Well, I know I've been in several. Most members of my family have. I don't know the statistics, but you're right, it is common. In 10 years of practice, it seems like friends and contacts from every walk of life have been through this. Rich people, poor people alike, we've all got to use the highways, and at some time somebody's going to mess up driving, and unfortunately that results in people being injured and then needing to make injury claims, property damage claims, and lawsuits.
So far in this interview, I've learned that accidents which seem so cut and dry at the time can be really complicated.
Well, sure. If these things were really that simple, then you wouldn't need a good lawyer. You'd be able to work things out on your own. But unfortunately, the laws are complicated, and insurance companies didn't get rich and grow into some of the biggest companies in the world by paying every claim or giving their money away. So they're often very tight-fisted with their money. Unfortunately, they're not always fair. I think a lot of us that went through Katrina learned about insurance companies and how they like to delay and sometimes deny payment, and the auto accident field's no different. So that's where lawyers come in. When push comes to shove, we can level the playing field and help people to collect.
And I just wonder, what motivated you to write this book?
Well, I enjoy writing. Going back to my time in law school when I was editor of the Law Review, I found that I really liked it. As you know and talked about earlier in the interview, I've written some other things, newspaper articles for your website. Our local newspaper, the Ponchatoula Times, gave me my start. I'm still their legal columnist. So that's something that I like to do. But the real reason was more practical here in my practice. As we've grown in the last 10 years and my practice has improved, I've noticed 2 key differences than when I started. The first is the phone's ringing a lot more. And it's not always just clients or adjusters or judges or lawyers that I'm dealing with, but it's potential clients. And in the old days, when I only had a few cases, I had plenty of time to talk to everybody and answer their questions. That's not the case anymore. The other factor is, now that I have more work and better work, I'm spending more time on working those cases rather than talking to potential clients. So it's created this time vacuum where I just don't have the time to take everybody's call all the time and answer these questions. So I figured if I sat down, took a few weekends, took some late nights, wrote this handbook, which I've worked hard to make it 50 pages or less and cram as much helpful information as I can into that, then people can review this. I've tried to address the most frequent questions I usually get about accident cases, and now they can look at it in the comfort of their home. And rather than having to call me when I'm at the office between 8 and 5 and working around my busy court schedule and hoping to get a return call on my schedule rather than theirs, they can just go online and immediately download this and read it any time, and it'll answer most of their questions. So that was the big reason.
So it's free?
Yeah, it's free. It's instantly downloadable online at accidenthandbook.com, and we'll mail it to anybody who asks for a copy.
So let's recap, bottom line, the whole thing. What do we take away from the accident handbook?
If you only took away one message, I'd want you to know what to do after you got in an accident. The first thing you should do is get medical treatment as soon as possible. Go see your doctor. If you're most comfortable with your family doctor, go see them. If you'd rather go to a chiropractic clinic, the emergency room, a walk-in clinic, any of those are fine, but go see a doctor as soon as possible to tell them that you've been in an accident and that you've been injured, and describe your symptoms as completely as possible. The next thing to do is get as much information at the accident scene. The other driver's information, photographs if possible, information from the police officer who's working your accident, and so on. Next thing to consider is don't sign any forms until you talk to your lawyer. Especially, don't give a statement to the other driver's insurance adjuster, and don't sign any of their forms. And lastly, contact a lawyer as soon as possible. There's strict time limitations in Louisiana. If you don't get your suit filed within a year of your accident, you can lose all your rights. And if you want your lawyer to handle your case right, you need to contact them well before that. So those are the 4 things, and if you only took away one message from my book or this interview, that's what I'd like it to be.
So how do you choose an accident lawyer? Everybody has a friend who's a lawyer. Is it the type of case that almost any lawyer can handle?
Well, you want to look at a few things. First and foremost, you want to look at a lawyer's experience. And keep in mind, quality is just as important as quantity. A lot of lawyers love to throw their years at you. I've been in practice 25 years, they might say. Well, they might not be practicing well for 25 years, so it's important to figure out what they've been doing during that time. Have they handled the type of case you have? For example, they might ask, what percentage of your practice is accident injury? For me, I've been in practice 10 years, 8 years in private practice, and during those 8 years, auto accident injury has been my #1 focus, the majority of my work. The next thing you want to look at are qualifications. There you start as basic as where'd you go to school, what kind of grades did you get, what'd you do after that. Then you look into the finer points of things such as, have you been published? What have you published? Are your publications related to the type of case I have? Accident, injury, things of that sort. Finally, you want to look at the lawyer's reputation. Now, this is probably the toughest to address, and the one area that you don't want to address is head on, because we lawyers will all tell you we think we have great reputations, but that might not always be the case. Fortunately, there are some places you can look. There are now some great legal directories online. Certainly you're aware of Martindale Hubbell. That's kind of the granddaddy of legal directories. Lawyers have been using it for over a century. They have a rating system there that gives lawyers rating. AV or preeminent is the highest rating they get. Ideally, you'd like to have a lawyer with that rating. Avvo, that's spelled AVVO, which is avvo.com, is the world's largest legal directory. It gives a numerical rating to attorneys, 1 through 10, 10 being the best. The higher rated your lawyer, the more probable professional attainment and better reputation they may have. Finally, you can look at other sources that may see lawyers in practice. If you know lawyers that don't practice injury work, you may ask them, because maybe while they're waiting for their family case, they see a good injury lawyer handle an injury case in court. Maybe you ask judges. They'd be ideal resources, but of course we don't all have access to judges. But those are the 3 things to look at. But the most important thing to do when selecting an attorney, while considering those 3 factors, is to interview that attorney. I don't know a single auto accident injury lawyer that would refuse a potential client a consultation where they would either talk to that person on the phone or meet with them in person to discuss the case. And if you interview that lawyer, you're going to be able to get a feel for them, whether you like them. You're going to get a feel for their credentials, and you can put them on the hot seat. Ask them all these questions and see what they say. And if it passes a smell test and it makes sense and you're comfortable, then you're a lot farther along than just throwing darts on Google.
What about accidents that you hear the other guy doesn't have insurance?
Well, that's a tragedy, and I've seen a number of them in our practice here. I've been at it about 10 years. Auto accident is my #1 practice area, and I've seen plenty of people walk into this conference room and tell me about a horrific accident where they've been injured, only to later learn that the person who hit them had no insurance. Usually insurance and money go hand in hand. The rich guy who owns 3 McDonald's chains up and down Hammond is going to have a lot of insurance to protect his sizable assets. However, the poor person who can't afford a big insurance policy doesn't need a big insurance policy. Sometimes they illegally carry no insurance. There are ways to protect that. There's a chapter in here about how to protect against uninsured motorists and underinsured motorists, and that is by buying insurance. Insurance is underinsured motorist coverage. It's absolutely essential. I've written a number of articles about that in various papers on your website and others, and that's the best way to protect. But if you don't have insurance, you can end up getting nothing, even if you're hurt bad and even if it's 100% their fault.
So this book will give you Even some tips on how to talk to your insurance agent, because nobody wants to be left holding the bag like you described. And let me just be honest, living where we do, this happens to be Tangipahoa Parish, we probably have a larger than average number of uninsured drivers here.
Sure, I don't know all the stats, but I do know that our minimum coverage in this state of $15,000 per person for injuries is the lowest in the country. And I also know that we have one of the highest uninsured rates. So that means, and I've seen this in practice, most people driving on the road either have very little insurance or possibly no insurance. And when you think about it, $15,000 doesn't get you that very far. Doesn't get you very far when you're talking about what medical costs these days. When just that first stop at the emergency room may be a few thousand, and just a few months of follow-up with any kind of doctor that's going to see you fairly often, whether it's a chiropractor or a general practice doctor, a few thousand more. It doesn't take very long to blow through there. And if you're talking about something major, something that might require surgery or hospitalization, that'll be gone in a flash. So UM insurance is very important.
Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What are some of the common mistakes that we laymen make in an accident?
Well, the first would be waiting too long to go to the doctor. You know, I think of people, my dad comes to mind. He's a tough guy who's played football and hunted his whole life, and he's not really keen on going to the doctor until he absolutely has to. I can think of 2 incidents when he cut his knee with a chainsaw, and the first time he didn't even want to go to the hospital. That would not be a model client, because to collect you have to go to a hospital or some kind of healthcare provider, chiropractor, general doctor, even a specialist like a surgeon, emergency room, walk-in clinic. But somebody who's a licensed healthcare professional has to see you, treat you, diagnose you, and essentially say you're hurt and this accident caused your injury. So if that doesn't happen, you could be at home chopping 10 Tylenol a day, but you're not going to have a good case no matter how badly you're hurting if you don't go to the doctor, get it diagnosed. Another is not getting enough information at the accident scene. You want to know who the other driver is, what's their license plate number, who's their insurance carrier. Now,
Can't you get all that later from the accident report?
You can if the police get involved, but I'll tell you, even the best police officers sometimes make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And so if you have, for example, a cell phone camera with you, it's a really good idea to snap a shot of your car, snap a shot of their car, snap a shot of the person who was driving, because sometimes later the stories may change. It's much information. You'll never get another chance to recreate that accident. And when you come see me or any other accident attorney, it's too late. The cars have been moved. They've maybe been even repaired. We won't be able to go back in time, but getting info at the accident site is critical. And fortunately, good police officers help, but don't rely on them to do it all.
How can you get a copy of the book?
Well, there are 2 ways that are very easy. The easiest thing to do is called Accident Handbook. Simply go to accidenthandbook.com. The other way is you can call my office and we'll mail you one by priority mail, and that's 985-467-9525. The information presented in this video is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as legal advice. If you need legal assistance, contact an attorney immediately. This video is excerpts of an Action News 17 interview done on January 21st, 2013, reproduced with permission.